Welcome, everyone. This is the Shooting It Straight podcast with Justin Jackson. I am your host slash producer John. Excited to be with you all tonight on a Monday night to talk about some more Carolina basketball. We had some action yesterday. The Tar Heels played against Johnson C. Smith. So we're going to spend today's episode breaking down that game, mining it for any insights ahead of the season. Before we get into the basketball talk, we want to do a quick housekeeping checklist here. First of all, anyone who's watching live tonight, we appreciate you for joining us. We're going to be live every single Monday night during basketball season. So stay tuned to Inside Carolina's YouTube channel. Be sure to check us out each week here. And also, we want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors for this show and all of Inside Carolina's podcasts. I want to give a shout out to Congruity HR, the leading provider for Tar Heel business owners' payroll, HR, and employee benefits needs. And also to Johnny T-Shirt. We'll talk about them some more later in the show. Justin, I'm going to come to you. How's it going? And what are your thoughts after yesterday's big win over Johnson C. Smith?
It's good. Happy to be back and doing this show again. I am ready to see some real competition. Obviously, all respect to Johnson C. Smith, but when you kind of see that discrepancy of talent, it is difficult to kind of pick and find things throughout the game that you can really say we're really good or teaching points or things like that. But it is North Carolina basketball again on TV, and it was refreshing to see it back on. So I think there's a few things that we can kind of pick and choose throughout this game that we saw that maybe is something that we can watch throughout the season.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the box score just to catch our viewers up on what happened yesterday, just in case you didn't have a chance to watch the game. Final score, UNC 127, Johnson C. Smith 63. So a huge blowout just in terms of the score there. Let me talk a little bit about some of the specific Tar Heels that did well. The headliner, Ian Jackson, 21 points, 8 of 10 from the free throw line, 6 of 10 from the field. He had a really impressive performance, much more aggressive, got to the line, had the highlight dunk as well. That's the thumbnail for this video. So shout out to Ian for playing a really solid game. From there, the next highest score was Ven Allen Lubin. He had 18 points, also contributed 12 rebounds for the Tar Heels. And then from there, it was just a really balanced day for UNC. 7 players had double figures, which is really impressive. Justin, when you look at the box score from yesterday's game, what else stands out to you?
I think there's a few things. For one, I think shooting has kind of been that question mark, one of the question marks going into this season. And, where will the shooting come from? How will they come? How will shots come? And who will kind of be those guys to step up to kind of be those floor spacers and guys to knock down shots? 7 for 19 from 3, even though I think the defense was probably a little bit less active than they'll see once the season starts. Still going 7 for 19, 37% is a good start. You had, quite a few people kind of contribute. You had Cade have a couple, Elliott hit one, RJ hit one. You had a few different people kind of contribute to that. So I think that's a good sign going into this season that guys are, confident stepping into those shots. It's hard in a game like that whenever you score so many points in the paint. You just don't really have a good sample size when it comes to shots from the outside. But, I thought that was a good one. I thought another big thing that we've kind of talked about, kind of a pattern, is just these guards getting downhill. I think you saw a lot of, Seth getting downhill, making plays at the rim. Obviously, Elliott, I was talking to I was actually talking to Kenny, and I don't think we've seen a point guard that has the passing ability that Elliott has, probably since Kendall, back when Kendall came into school. And, some of the ways he sets up his teammates, which also then set himself up for drives to be able to go in free because guys don't want to come over and help because he's such a good passer. So just kind of watching him play it at such a great pace. I think one thing that was pretty awesome to me was kind of just the different pace that Seth and Elliott play at this year compared to last year. Just kind of watching Seth come off of a ball screen. You can kind of see him probing a little bit more, kind of waiting for things to develop. And the same with Elliott that I think you didn't really see last year. So I think that's huge growth and improvement, just from that standpoint for them. And then I think the last thing, man, is, I think a lot of people can kind of say, I think the biggest question mark is still who's going to be that big that really solidifies himself down low, which obviously that contributes to rebounding as well. And I think that North Carolina still needs that true big that is able to kind of, be that go-to guy down low. But I think kind of looking at the rebounding, I think rebounding by committee is going to be so big for this team. I mean, you had Drake had 9, Jalen had 8, Jay Witt had 8. You just have a bunch of different guys that kind of contribute to the rebounding side of things outside of Van Allen Lubin and everybody else that kind of had those big days. So I think it's still a big question mark, and obviously you need to see it against better competition and kind of see how it works its way out. But rebounding by committee is going to be huge for this team, and I think you kind of saw a little bit of a glimpse in this little scrimmage against Johnson C. Smith.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the rebounding. It's tough to take away too much from an exhibition like this, but one of the things that you can do is compare exhibitions against each other. That's a little bit maybe of a better sample. So last year, UNC played against St. Augustine's. That was one of their kind of tune-up games on October 27th, 2023. In that game, UNC had 62 rebounds. St. Augustine had 25. Last night or yesterday afternoon, the discrepancy pretty similar, honestly. 54 rebounds for UNC, 24 rebounds for Johnson C. Smith. And I think that term there, rebounding by committee, is going to be really key. Last year's team had some proven rebounders like Armando Bacot, but they also had some guys who just were not afraid to get in there and really attack the glass, thinking specifically here of Harrison Ingram. He's not someone who had a ton of height. He wasn't a 7-footer or anything like that, but it felt like he just had a lot of heart. He was hustling for loose balls. He was attacking the glass. Mm-hmm. So who is it on this year's team that's going to kind of fill that role? Who's going to fill Bacot's role on the glass? I think those are two things to keep an eye on. There's another point about pace that I'm glad you brought up. A lot of people have been talking about the fast break points and the speed that North Carolina wants to play at. Yesterday, 34-0 in fast break points. That's very impressive. But I think there's the other side of that equation, which is really slowing down and being patient in the half court. And I think that's the pick and roll chemistry that you're talking about with Elliott Cadeau and some of the bigs on this team. There were a lot of possessions yesterday where UNC set a screen, rolled away, came back, set another screen. And Elliott is a good enough passer. He knows how to work the angles. He can find every pass. He's patient enough now, too, to kind of take a beat, let the defense adjust, and then he makes that really impressive pocket pass or whatever the case may be there. So there'll be a lot of talk about how fast UNC is going in the early part of the season and, the impressive fast break dunks and things like that. But also keep an eye out for that half-court patience by some of you at UNC's guards. I think that's just as important to have a successful season.
Yeah, and I think kind of going to that pace, I think it also a big contributor to them being able to get out and transition so fast, I think, is their versatility on defense. I think, you just kind of look at that starting five that they had Basically everybody could get the ball and at least push it some and get it down the floor quickly. And so, I mean, there was a bunch of different times, and like we said, I definitely want to preface everything that we talk about with knowing that there's going to be a lot more talent on the floor against UNC going forward. But you saw a lot of situations where it was a rebound, one or two passes, and it was a layup at the other end. And I think once again that just goes back to having at least four ball handlers on the floor to be able to have the confidence to either get the rebound or get the outlet pass and just go instead of a big having to wait for a guard to come back and get it and kind of slowing the rhythm of the game down. So yeah, I think that's huge. And I mean, you also saw a couple of times kind of to your point of Elliott kind of going to try to get the ball, or even RJ or Seth, kind of okay, let's get into whatever set it is we want to get into, whether it's a high ball screen or whatever other sets they have. You kind of saw that leadership from them as far as just kind of, okay, let's slow it up. We don't have anything at first. I like to say, and one of my favorite coaches told me, but it was, play quick, but not in a hurry. And so, a lot of times you might be able to get out in transition, but you don't necessarily want to take too many 1-on-2s and, 2-on-3 type fast breaks. If you don't have anything, let's push the pace. Let's get the defense kind of moving in that direction. Now let's get into some sort of action, high ball screen. You saw a lot of get action, which for those who don't know, get action is whenever the guy with the ball just passes to the big and goes off of basically a handoff. You saw a lot of that kind of action. So you kind of get the defense moving back and forth and the guy on the ball having to fight over or under screen. So it causes more confusion. So I think that was one of the things that I did enjoy watching was their pace and just the differences in pace. It wasn't just all let's get the rebound and go. There was some times where it was, okay, let's slow it up. Maybe we haven't gotten, a guy that we want to touch the ball. Maybe he hasn't touched it in a couple of possessions, or maybe we just haven't gotten a good shot in the last few possessions. Let's make sure we get one and execute right. So I think that is a great point going forward, just the leadership and knowing when to go fast and when to kind of slow up and let's kind of run through our stuff and execute.
You talked a little bit about leadership there at the end. I want to bring in our first listener question of the night. This one is from a regular, Melinda Dolphin. She asks, it seems like the team shared the ball well in the exhibition game. You met them this summer. How do you feel about the team chemistry? I think that was something that really stood out when I was watching yesterday, just how excited the guys were for each other at the end of the game. The whole roster got to play. The starters were cheering on some of the guys at the end of the bench. This is an NIL era of college basketball too, so it feels like the rosters change over more and more every single year. But it seems like UNC has a really strong nucleus and therefore a really strong team chemistry thus far. Justin, what do you think about that? Is that something you've seen when you've been around the team, just the strength of this team's chemistry?
Yeah, it's kind of they're like weirdly close. And the reason I say weirdly close is when you have this many freshmen and brand new transfers come in, I mean, it takes time for teams to kind of gel and get used to their roles and guys on the team and things like that. I mean, you got to think of, when you first get into school, you're basically trying to prove to everybody that you should be playing a ton or should be getting this many shots or whatever. So it usually takes time for guys to kind of settle down and kind of, flow into whatever their role is for the team. So to see these guys, I think probably the best image of that was at the very end of the game, whenever you saw Drake have that unbelievable two-handed block. And then on the other end, they had the dunk and everybody on the bench was going crazy. I mean, that's always a great, great sign. I mean, obviously it's always when you're winning by 60 points, it's obviously very easy to cheer on too, but to kind of see a team that's brand new with each other like that, I think that's definitely encouraging. And, I think that'll get them through the tough times throughout the season. That's probably the biggest thing that gets you through those times is how close you are as a team. So I think that's going to help them very much as the season kind of gets going.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim Hawkins, Inside Carolina's photographer, had some great photos of that yesterday. So check out that photo gallery online if you want to see some more of those types of photos. You brought up some of the young guys on the team. I want to talk a little bit more about Ian Jackson, and I'm going to read a little bit more of his stat line here just for our viewers. He was 6 of 10 from the field, 1 of 3 from the three-point line, 80% at the free throw line, only had 1 rebound, but then he pitched in 21 points. Did have 3 turnovers, so that's maybe a little bit of something to keep an eye on for him. If we're nitpicking, we have to show the good and the bad here, even in such a blowout win. But it seemed like he was really aggressive. He showed some of his athleticism. Justin, what did you see from Ian specifically yesterday?
Yeah, I think I think it's never been a question of how skilled and talented Ian Jackson is, right? From his ability to score, from his athleticism, from just God-given abilities that he has. That's never been a question. I think, yesterday was a very great picture of that. I think one thing, and honestly, the whole UNC team, and they were talking about it a lot on the broadcast as well, was just the amount of playing through physicality and playing through contact was pretty impressive to me, especially for him as a freshman. To kind of see him be able to go in there and finish through contact and draw as many fouls. I mean, 10 free throws. I don't know if I ever shot 10 free throws in a game, period, my whole college career. So to see that, I think is one of the more impressive things. I think for him is the biggest question is, one, shooting. Is he able to shoot consistently from behind the 3-point line? And 2, defensively. Can he use that athleticism that he has on that defensive end, which will only help himself go, forward to the next level and, even in college, and will help the team even more. So I think for me, what was more impressive was maybe getting to the free throw line as many times as he did. I think everybody will talk about his dunks and his athleticism and those athletic plays that he had and almost dunks. But I think what was more impressive to me was just his ability to get downhill and play through contact. So I think, I think that's something to definitely watch. And, as the competition starts to kind of level up, if he can continue to do that.
I did a quick search of your stat profile, Justin. It looks like you had 15 free throw attempts in that famous 103-100 Kentucky game, December 17th. Other than that, though, I think that was the only time you were in double digits in free throw attempts. It looks like you had 8 a few times, but
there we go.
You
appreciate you fact checking me, man.
I have to keep you honest. And Ian, in his 3rd exhibition game, is already getting to the line at a pretty good rate there. I want to bring up this question from Thomas Yancey, because I think this is kind of fits into what we're talking about here with the athleticism of this team. Now, Justin and I are pretty good UNC basketball historians. We're not the ultimate UNC basketball historians here. The question from Thomas, is this the most athletic UNC has been in a good while? I think this team is definitely up there. And this team brings a little bit of that vertical element that maybe UNC has been missing in years past. UNC has had some really good athletes come through, but up and down the roster, there's a lot of athleticism. I think another place that stands out to me is lobs. That's not been something that UNC has done a lot, but it feels like this team has a few lob catchers, and that's just another thing that Elliott can exploit on the offensive end, is being able to throw a few lobs. Justin, what do you think? Is this the most athletic UNC has been in a while?
I think it definitely looks at it to the naked eye. I think what makes it seem that way is the way that the offense is. Because my team's had some real athletes on them. My freshman year, we had JP, we had Theo, we had Isaiah, Bryce. We had some legit athletes on our team as well, but we had 2 bigs inside at all times. So those pick and roll lobs, or those drive cut lobs, or drive / dunks, you just never really saw a ton of those because the spacing was just so much different. But with that being said, I mean, guys like Ian and Drake, I think, are two of the more athletic wings that we've seen in a while. I will say that. And then obviously Elliott is obviously very athletic in his own right. Jay Witt's athletic. Um, so I think it looks like that. Once again, I think it's easy to kind of say because I don't know if half of these lobs would happen against better competition necessarily. Um, but there's definitely some serious athletes out there on the floor, which makes it fun to watch, and also just helps their versatility throughout the game. I think there's something to, the storyline is going to be rebounding and shooting for this team, I think, once again this year. But there's something to having the ability to also read when to cut if you're not necessarily a great knockdown shooter, and having Elliott as somebody to be able to kind of see and play make from that standpoint. You saw a couple of different times of just cuts from the baseline when there was drives and it was drop off dunk, um, or even some of the pick and roll drop off dunks. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand having a point guard like Elliott, and even RJ at times making those plays for everybody else, plus having guys that can really play above the rim. I think is kind of what makes it seem like they're so athletic. But yeah, I always wish I was had a little bit of athleticism like these type of guys. But they're definitely blessed for sure.
That's another fact check there. You're definitely selling yourself short on the athleticism. I want to take a second to shout out our sponsors for this episode and all of Inside Carolina's podcasts. First, I want to talk about Johnny T-Shirt, the best place for Tar Heel gear. It's a Chapel Hill tradition since 1983 and 20-year partners of Inside Carolina. I actually didn't know that. 20 years, that's a long time.
A long time.
That means something. So we appreciate Johnny T-Shirt being such long partners of Inside Carolinas. Be sure to visit them on Franklin Street or check out their big online store. Additionally, we want to shout out Congruity HR, the leading provider for Tar Heel business owners' payroll, HR, and employee benefits needs. Inside Carolina listeners can get a free payroll and HR assessment by emailing Matt at Congruity. So check out InsideCarolina.com if you want more information about that. We're going to take a quick break, then we'll come back with more UNC basketball talk here on Shooting It Straight. And we are back to talk more UNC basketball. We have 99 people here live with us on a Monday night talking about UNC's third scrimmage of the season. We appreciate everyone for joining us here in the live chat. Get your questions in for Justin and I. Be sure to like the video and subscribe as well to the Inside Carolina YouTube channel. We're getting closer and closer to 25,000 YouTube subscribers, which is pretty cool. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Justin, I want to turn the conversation to another piece of yesterday's scrimmage that was really interesting to me, the depth that UNC showed. So we know that Hubert Davis has not played a super big bench thus far in his UNC tenure. For example, last year in Ken Palm's bench minutes statistic, UNC was 332nd in the nation. That means they weren't using their bench all that much. But last night, I believe 9 players got more than 16 minutes of action. Of course, it's a blowout scrimmage, so you're going to try to rotate as much as you can. But a lot of players contributed offensively. And I'm curious kind of what you think about the rotation, where you think the line might be when it starts to get into crunch time, specifically thinking about that Kansas game early in the season. Do you think Hubert starts to shorten the bench a little bit? So again, the starters, Cadeau, RJ, Seth, Jalen Washington, and Cade Tyson. And then the guys in the mix on the bench, VAL, the 2 freshmen, Drake, Ian, and Jalen Withers were the guys with more than 16 minutes last night. First, Justin, on the depth, what you see from UNC's depth there and your thoughts about the rotation as well.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to get into a rhythm when you play more minutes. That's just kind of how basketball works. And so you have a game like yesterday where everybody got a chance, like you said, what 10 guys played over 15 minutes, basically nine guys played over 15
Mhm.
minutes. Um, that's going to be very very easy to kind of get into a rhythm, get a sweat, feel the basketball a little bit, um, and be able to be more aggressive and get into a rhythm. Once the season starts, I think I could see Coach Davis going down to 8, maybe 9 guys. I think there's at least 9 guys right now that's definitely fighting for more playing time. Um, I think that's going to be a strength of theirs. I think that that's kind of what will get them through a lot of games. The tough part and all of that is 2 of those are freshmen who have never played at this level, which are very capable. Not saying that they're not capable, but it takes a little bit of time, like we've talked about. 2 of those guys are transfers coming in. Um, and so I think with that, I think you could maybe, I wouldn't be surprised if Coach Davis, kind of starts to cut playing time. I don't know who he would cut. Obviously, that's why he gets paid the big bucks and we don't. Um, but I think that, you know, having the depth that this team has, I could very easily see him going 8 or 9 guys. I could see him going 7 or 8 guys. I think it's just a matter of as time goes, as these games start and they really start to count. I think that's kind of when Coach Davis and the coaching staff will have to start kind of making those decisions. Um, but based off of kind of so far in the preseason, I think there's 9 guys that are you know, very easily could play serious minutes for this team. So, I think it's just once again it's a matter of time. Kind of seeing how the season progresses, how guys progress from game in and game out, and then once the season starts with travel and kind of the speed and the different strength with these freshmen, kind of seeing that and things like that. I think you'll start to kind of see, how the lineups will start turning out.
Yeah, it's interesting because of how the season sets itself up. I mean, the Kansas game is so early in the season, and that's going to be a hostile environment. It's going to be a challenging environment for some of UNC's freshmen for some of the reasons that we've talked about earlier this season on this show, playing in front of those types of crowds and still being able to produce. And also, when you look at the bench, the skill sets on the bench are really ones that either UNC needs or they're so talented you can't keep them off the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking a look right now at, like, for example, the 22-23 season. Some of the guys on the bench: Tyler Nickel, Puff Johnson, a freshman, Seth Trimble, sophomore DeMarco Dunn. Those skill sets, maybe weren't as needed at that point in the season in 22-23. Maybe they weren't as talented, but it's going to be really hard to keep Drake and Ian
Mm-hmm.
off the floor. And then you're looking down the bench and you see Van Allen, Lubin. You need that size on the floor. Same with Jalen Withers. You need that size and that shooting off the floor. So it might also just be because of how this roster is structured that UNC wants to play fast, that UNC is a little bit light on size. They're going to need to play more players as the season goes along, just to kind of get through the season. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Hubert Davis adapts. It never has felt like he hasn't played players, for any bad reason. I think if he feels like he can look down the bench and he sees someone who can help the team win, he's going to put them in. A great example of that is last season against Alabama, right? Paxton Wojcik had not played a ton all season, but in an elimination game, he thought Paxton Wojcik gave UNC the best chance to win, so he played heavy minutes there. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how that goes as the season evolves, like you were saying, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it's for sure a strength to have this many guys and this many players. I think one guy that I think is going to be probably the X factor, and you talked about Harrison for this team last year, and everything that he did from that standpoint and kind of being the X factor for the team last year. I think when you look at a guy like Drake and some of the things that he did, in yesterday's game, and then obviously just throughout the preseason, um, his ability to impact the game in so many different ways, I think, is kind of going to your point of you're going to have to play a guy like that, whether he's a freshman or not. Just his ability defensively to switch up, um, and take people out of what offense they're trying to run. His ability to rebound, his ability to get to the rim, things like that, I think, is what's going to force his way onto the floor. Um, so I just wanted to hit on that a little bit because his athleticism is very impressive, just like Ian's as well. But everything that he does to help this team and his versatility is going to be huge for this team. And it's going to make that, who are we going to play? Who's going to start? Who's going to do? It's going to make that even harder when you have a guy like him kind of, putting out that kind of effort, and then you have other guys trying to vie for minutes as well. So I think it's definitely going to be a strength for this team. I don't think you'll necessarily see it, like we saw it 2 or 3 years ago where it was 6 or 7 guys. I don't think you will see the lineup cut to that. But who knows? Coach Davis might start seeing something in practice or throughout these first few games that, kind of changes his mind and the direction he's going. So I think really only time will tell.
And another piece of that calculus is going to be making sure you always have enough shooting on the floor at the same time. With that, we want to talk a little bit about Cade Tyson, and I have some fancy charts to show here. I'll narrate them for all of us listening on podcast. This is a new chart that came out tonight from evanmia.com. He's an advanced college basketball stats analyst. Basically, the top line on this, Cade Tyson is projected as the 3rd best shooter in the country. His predicted three-point shooting percentage is 41.3%, which is basically the top of the top in the country. And he also shared this really interesting chart with us showing his career three-point shooting progression. So as he's played more games, he's continued to improve as a shooter. He's in the top percentiles nationally. And he's going to just really, from this statistical analysis, be one of the best shooters in the country. We've talked a little bit about the adjustments that he might have to make as a shooter now that he's coming up to play at North Carolina. He himself has even talked about the differences in playing in the Smith Center when the bottom seats are down and things like that. But I thought that was a really interesting chart to be able to share with our viewers here. UNC is getting a proven sharpshooter in Cade Tyson. He showed it a little bit yesterday, going 2 of 2 from 3-point range. Justin, just what kind of benefit does that give in offense when you have someone who's that talented of a shooter on your team, and how can he continue to help the Tar Heel offense moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a luxury to have somebody that, when you drive and kick. I think Cade they had a driving kick, and Cade was in the corner, and they kicked it to him, and he made the 3. When you have a guy on the floor that you are very confident that if you kick it to him and he shoots it, that it's going in, it changes the whole dynamic of the offense, right? Like when you have guys that maybe you have confidence in, but they haven't necessarily proven that they're, really a knockdown shooter. When you drive and kick it to them, there's a different level of confidence, from a shooter and a non-shooter. And so just having that and having, that threat on the floor that the defense has to react to. There's not going to be many times in a game when you can help off of Cade, just purely off of the history of his college career and what he's shown throughout his, years already being in college and at Belmont. So I think having that, it just forces defenses to kind of change what they're doing, and it opens things up for the offense way more, and it allows Elliott to have better passing lanes or, better ability to get downhill and get further into the paint, or give RJ the ability to kind of have easier looks because you're not, necessarily worried about a guy helping off too much. So I think just having him on the floor, just having that threat, um, it just changes everything. And I think it was good to see him knock down shots and confidently knock them down. Because like we talk about, usually it does take some time to kind of get used to playing in the Dean Dome, but hopefully his transition has already, kind of been sped up and he's ready to go as the season starts off.
Absolutely. There was a question in the chat from Thomas Yancey. Where is RJ on that chart? RJ is a really good shooter, but he just missed the chart. Evan Mia's projected three-point shooting percentage for RJ Davis is 39%. Keep in mind, Cade Tyson and the rest of that chart a little bit higher, north of 40%. And then UNC has a lot of shooters in that 34 to 33% range. That'll be a storyline to keep an eye on throughout the season. Justin, UNC has played 3 exhibition games. I feel like when you were playing not that long ago, but the preseason wasn't so long. Now they're going to have world tours for these preseasons. It's going to get longer and longer, it feels like. But 3 preseason games for the Tar Heels. They've had some opportunity to play some good competition as well, that Memphis scrimmage. What are your final takeaways from the quote unquote preseason and focus areas for the Elon game for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the preseason has been awesome. I think for us, it was easier because we had that date of late night to kind of look forward to, and that kind of took up one of the, I guess, exhibition games for us. So I'm sure just like we're ready for this preseason to be done and the season to start, I'm sure the players themselves are kind of ready to get going in the regular season. So I think the preseason has done exactly what it's supposed to for this team. I think it's allowed them to gel. I think it's allowed each and every one of them to kind of see what different guys can do for this team and do on the floor. I think it's allowed the freshmen to kind of, slowly get a little more adjusted to the college game and playing these three preseason games. And I think it's also allowed just kind of the coaches to kind of see what they're working with going into the season, going against other teams. I think that's also big because you can watch guys in practice and you can watch them in pickup and workouts. But when they start to play against other guys, that they don't see every single day and that maybe don't know, they don't know their tendencies and things like that, then you can really start to see, okay, this guy's going to do this for us. This guy can fit this role. So I think it definitely, the preseason did, what it's supposed to do for teams. I think you can walk away from the preseason kind of knowing what the identity of this team is going forward. And I think that's kind of the guard play and the versatility that they have. And you can also walk away with knowing things that, throughout the season they might have to get better at and improve on. I think rebounding is going to be really key. I think shooting is going to be really key to keep an eye on as far as who can step in outside of RJ and possibly Cade, who can step in and shoot these, shots from the outside and knock them down and be able to create space for everybody else on the floor. So I love this preseason. I think you have a little bit more of an answer of who this team is and what they are and what going forward, what it could look like throughout the season. So, I think I'm definitely ready to see, these more competitive games hit and see really what this team is really made of.
Absolutely. The season starts Monday, November 4th at 9 p.m. in the Smith Center. Elon comes to town. Keep in mind, again, these are preseason stat projections. So just like the Cade Tyson shooting number and this number I'm about to give you, it's just an estimate, not a perfect number. But Elon is ranked 297th in the country per KenPom.com compared to UNC ranked 15th. So it's not the closest matchup that UNC will have all season. But just a few days later, Kansas on Friday, November 8th. Kansas is ranked 7th in that same ranking. So it's going to be a really exciting start to the season. Keep in mind as well, I know it'll be late, but Justin and I will be live after the game against Elon. So that'll be exciting for everyone. Stay up late to watch the game. and then you can just keep it rolling. Throw on the YouTube stream. We'll break the entire game down for you. So Sean, Tony, Jeffrey, all of our loyal viewers here in the chat, we're going to be keeping an eye out for you next week after that game against Elon. All right, Justin, I will give you the final word here. We had the opportunity to break down UNC scrimmage against Johnson C. Smith, talk all about the preseason today. Any final thoughts, last words for our viewers before we get out of here tonight?
No, I mean, I think, obviously, like I said, it's going to be really good to see them go against, even though there's kind of that discrepancy in the Ken Palm rankings. It's not what the discrepancy was in this past scrimmage. So I'm definitely excited to see them against better competition. Excited to kind of see how this team evolves as the season starts up. And I think they've got a good group. I think they've got a group that loves playing with each other, that loves hanging out with each other. And that's going to take them a long way outside of all of the talent and skill that they have. So very excited. Once again, thank you everybody that came in here and hung out with us and listened to us talk a little bit about North Carolina. And yeah, can't wait for the live show post game next week. So I guess we'll see everybody then.